Amber Rudd says "Don't call me a racist" amid foreign workers' row. Home Secretary Amber Rudd has safeguarded arrangements to make firms accomplish more to utilize British individuals, saying "Don't call me a supremacist" for discussing movement. Under her proposition, firms could be compelled to unveil what rate of their workforce is non-British as an approach to urge them to contract more local people. Ms. Rudd said she needed to flush out organizations manhandling existing principles and push them into better conduct. Business has assaulted the thought, while one Tory MP called it divisive. Moving redesigns on UKIP administration and Conservative meeting grasp focus ground. PM tells Tories moderates focus on Labour's BME voters' transient checks to change tide of assessment. Organizations respond to Conservative outside specialists arranges the workforce proposition, reported at the Conservative gathering on Tuesday as a feature of a progression of measures intended to change the tide of general conclusion on movement after the Brexit vote is not appropriate as it is liable to interview. In any case, it has effectively incited a reaction, with Labour saying it will fan the blazes of xenophobia and disdain in our groups, and the SNP called it the most disreputable showcase of reactionary Conservative legislative issues in living memory. The Home Secretary trusts firms are escaping with not preparing enough British specialists, and the current inhabitant work test, which obliges firms to promote opening in the UK for 28 days before looking outside the EU, ought to be toughened up. Clear motivation. Organisations enrolling staff from outside the EU could need to exhibit what they have done to encourage a pool of nearby applicants and show what effect the decision of abroad competitors have on the neighbourhood work market. Instructions notes after her discourse likewise recommended they could be required to be clear about the extent of their workforce, which is worldwide, a practice which the Home Office says is standard in the US. Ms. Rudd said the current framework did not give firms a reasonable motivating force to legitimately consider the benefits of neighborhood hopefuls or to spend more on prepare them to carry out the occupations on offer. Asked whether she was set up to name and disgrace organizations which did not go along by distributed a breakdown of the nationality of their workforce, Ms. Rudd told BBC Radio 4 Today it was not something we are certainly going to do, but rather it was one of the instruments under audit as a method for poking individuals into better conduct. While numerous organizations were making an incredible showing with regards to utilizing neighborhood staff, she said there were firms which are not all that useful, and these are the ones we need to flush out. Referring to one business she knew of where 80% of whose staff were from outside the UK, there is still 1 in 10 18 to 24-year-olds in the UK who are unemployed. She included, "I need organizations to contemplate locally preparing individuals where conceivable. What's more, work with us to convey what we need, which is a more talented nearby work power." Dialect trap. In 2009, Prime Minister Gordon Brown was reprimanded for recommending that organizations ought to offer inclination to neighborhood staff where they could, an arrangement that was named in the media English employments for British labourers. Ms. Rudd, who battled to stay in the EU amid this admission, said she was cautious not to fall into the trap of utilising such dialect, especially given the unstable atmosphere after the Brexit vote, in which migration remains a very charged issue and a few regions have seen an ascent in contempt violations. "I am exceptionally mindful about the dialect, and when I took a gander at the discourse and thought how I would display it," she said. Be that as it may, she said movement couldn't be a no-go territory for government officials. "We ought to have the capacity to have a discussion about the abilities we require. I don't think we ought to have a circumstance where we can't discuss movement. We should not overlook the way that individuals need to discuss movement, and in the event that we do discuss migration, don't call me a bigot." Aptitude Holes business bunches responded watchfully to the recommendations, cautioning they would restrict their individuals' capacity to enlist individuals with the right aptitudes for the employment. Organizations do as such much in the UK to prepare up their labourers and, obviously, search for nearby contracts before setting off to the abroad market, said Adam Marshall, Acting Chief General of the British Chambers of Commerce. I don't think they ought to be punished for doing so when they have particular abilities needs. The EF said more than 66% of the UK makers it spoke to offered apprenticeships. The CBI's Delegate Executive General Josh Hardy said, English organisations put 45 billion a year preparing specialists in the UK. However, there are abilities holes at this moment, and if firms don't fill them, they can't develop and spread success. Unsettling preservationist MP Neil Carmichael, seat of the Commons Training Select Council and individual from the Open Britain Crusade, encouraged Ms Rudd to re-examine the arrangement. This unsettling approach would drive individuals, business and empathy out of British society and ought not be sought after any further. He said, individuals going to the UK to buckle down, pay their expenses and make a commitment to our general public ought to be commended, not disgraced. This sort of divisive governmental issues has no spot in 21st century Britain. Furthermore, Labour pioneer Jeremy Corbyn said drawing up arrangements of outside specialists would stop deceitful bosses undermining compensation in Britain. SNP pioneer Nicola Sturgeon, it is a shocking, backward, and gigantically upsetting advancement which will leave numerous individuals in Scotland, and over whatever is left of the UK in past, pondering, with genuine concern, what sort of nation the Tories need us to be. Lib Dem pioneer Tim Farron said, the administration's arrangement on remote labourers is a terrible little approach that should be tossed out on the garbage store. Pastors say they are still dedicated to decreasing net relocation to maintainable levels, interpreted as meaning beneath 100,000 a year, despite the fact that David Cameron neglected to meet the objective somewhere around 2010 and 2015, with net movement as of late surpassing 300,000.